Our leukocytes tend to be rather underappreciated cells. Almost everyone is aware that white blood cells fight infection, but they also do a lot more. Not only do they fight infection, but they help to clean up debris and remove foreign material and respond to all sorts of tissue damage. There are a number of different types of leukocytes. They all originate originally from a multipotent hematopoietic stem cell through the process of hematopoiesis. A lot of these cells remain circulating in the blood. Some end up traveling to different organs in the body and remaining there instead of circulating through the bloodstream. As far as the structure of the leukocytes, leukocytes are full cells. They have a nucleus, they have ribosomes and endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria, unlike what we saw with the erythrocytes. A couple of the things that are interesting about leukocyte structure, one is that they have a very dynamic cytoskeleton. By dynamic, I mean that their cytoskeleton can change quickly so that the leukocytes can change shape. This is particularly important when we have leukocytes that are inside the blood vessels that then need to squeeze out of the blood vessels and get into the tissues before they can actually do their job. So the leukocytes will roll around inside the blood vessels, then they stop, completely rearrange their cytoskeleton until they're very flat, squeeze out between two of the endothelial cells of a capillary, and then rework their cytoskeleton again back into a new shape. This is also important for those leukocytes that have to engulf or phagocytize cells or debris. They have to be able to change their shape to reach around it and bring that into the cell. The other important structural feature of the leukocytes are their granules. Leukocytes contain a lot of granules. These granules are really vesicles containing a number of important molecules. These molecules are different in the different types of leukocytes and contribute to the function of that particular leukocyte. Some leukocytes contain a lot of signaling molecules, things that will attract other leukocytes or things to the area. Some leukocytes contain molecules that are antimicrobial that will break down bacteria or fungi or other parasites. Some of them contain enzymes that help carry out reactions. So we have a lot going on in the vesicles of the leukocytes that contribute to their different functions. There are many different types of leukocytes. We're going to focus on the 5 types of leukocytes that we find circulating in the blood. The most common of the leukocytes that we find in the blood are the neutrophils. Neutrophils make up anywhere from 50 to 70% of the white blood cells that you would find circulating in your blood. Neutrophils are very mobile. They can move around very well, and they are the first responders to any sort of infection or tissue damage. They get there fast, and they phagocytize things that don't belong, especially bacteria. Neutrophils are very good at phagocytizing bacteria as well as fungi and viruses. However, they're fairly short-lived, so they rush to the scene of a problem, they start phagocytizing things that shouldn't be there, and then they die and actually contribute to the debris. The mess left behind by dead neutrophils is often cleaned up by monocytes. We're more familiar with referring to monocytes as macrophages. When they're found circulating in the blood, they're called monocytes. When they squeeze out of the blood vessels into the tissues, we refer to them as macrophages. And these are the cleanup crew of the blood. The macrophages phagocytize anything that doesn't belong. They phagocytize dead cells, including dead neutrophils. They phagocytize debris, foreign material, bacteria, viruses, just about anything they can engulf, they will. Lymphocytes make up 20 to 45% of the white blood cells circulating in your blood. There are also a lot of lymphocytes that are found in your organs like the spleen, the tonsils, the lymph nodes. These lymphocytes are keyed to specific pathogens. Each lymphocyte has the ability to recognize and fight a specific pathogen. This makes them really important for providing the specific defense that we need to fight off infective agents that we've seen before. The eosinophils are one of my favorites of the white blood cells. The eosinophils only make up about 2 to 4% of the white blood cells circulating in your blood, and they contain a lot of vesicles with some amazingly high-powered enzymes and antimicrobials to help break down pathogens that are a little more difficult to deal with. We see that eosinophils are involved in parasitic infections. So if you get a parasite, your eosinophils will rush to that, and they have the strong enzymes and antimicrobial compounds necessary to try and destroy parasites. Eosinophils are also connected to allergic responses. So people who are suffering from allergies often have an increased number of eosinophils. The last of the category of leukocytes we're going to talk about are the basophils. Basophils only make up about 0.5 to 1% of your circulating leukocytes. But basophils are important because they release histamine and heparin. Histamine and heparin help to increase blood flow and prevent blood clotting. These are particularly important when we encounter areas of damage and inflammation. When we talk about inflammation in the immune system, we're going to come back to basophils and the histamine and heparin that they release. One of the interesting things about leukocytes is that your body makes more of the type of leukocyte that you need most. So if there's a problem somewhere in your body will produce more of the leukocytes you need to fight that particular issue. That's where a differential white blood cell count is important. When you do a differential white blood cell count, you count the number of white blood cells that are in the blood, but you also look at the percentage of the different types of white blood cells. And by looking for variations in the different types of white blood cells, you can gain information about what might be wrong with someone. For example, if you have more than the normal number of neutrophils, you may be looking at a bacterial infection. When we're talking about leukocyte disorders, there are two main categories. There's leukopenia, which means not enough leukocytes, and there's leukocytosis, which means too many leukocytes. Normally, you should have between 5,000 and 10,000 leukocytes per microliter of blood. If you have fewer than that 5,000, that's where you're into the area of leukopenia. There are a number of things that can cause leukopenia, including heavy metal poisoning that interferes with the production of leukocytes, or chemotherapy that can destroy the bone marrow where the leukocytes are made, and some diseases such as chickenpox, influenza, measles, and HIV result in a decreased number of leukocytes. If you have more than 10,000 leukocytes per microliter of blood, that's where we're into leukocytosis, a high white blood cell count. Leukocytosis is often caused by some sort of an infection or an allergic response. Leukocytosis is often caused by some sort of underlying condition in the body, an infection or an allergic response. And then you can look for the specific type of leukocyte that's elevated to see what the problem is. In other cases, all of the leukocytes are elevated equally, like in the case of dehydration. When you're dehydrated, all of your blood cells are more concentrated, which gives you a higher number of leukocytes per microliter, but the percentages of the different types of leukocytes will be normal. We can also see leukocytosis in cases of leukemia. When you have cancer of your white blood cell producing cells, you produce more white blood cells than you need. Now, the problem with leukocytosis as a result of leukemia is that the cells that are made are not functional. It's not like you have lots of white blood cells and you're super good at fighting off infections and cleaning up debris. You make a lot of white blood cells that are not fully differentiated and not fully functional. So there are a lot of cells, but they're not doing their job.